You are listening to The Examine Life with Bram Levinson. Welcome back to the podcast. It has been a while, and I'm very happy to finally sit down behind the microphone and do this. It's been a while primarily because I've been working on other projects, and when I've got something that is specific, let's say to the book that I'm writing, I want to make sure not to use whatever that subject matter is for classes or for the podcast or for client meetings or coaching meetings or anything else that I'm working on. And so, it's almost like as inspiration hits, I need to pick my battles and I need to decide where I'm going to funnel that inspiration. And a lot of it recently has been funneled into the book. But I would be lying if I said that was the only reason, actually, why I haven't recorded an episode of the podcast. I feel like there are so many people talking right now. I feel like there are so many people talking into their phones, talking to no one, talking into a microphone, speaking to their adoring public. And frankly, the whole thing it just fucks me over a little bit. Sorry, but it does. I find it annoying. I have noticed a few people over the past couple of months who I don't know, but people who I've just observed as I walk by them, who are literally speaking into their Instagram live or whatever. They're speaking into their device and they're walking down the street speaking into their device. And I just think that there's so much insanity to that. And I understand it all, obviously. I mean, I'm doing this, right? So I'm contributing to what I'm objecting to, which is one of the reasons why I haven't done this, because I don't want to be sitting here behind this microphone and just speaking bullshit, spewing bullshit out into the world, because I suppose that there's a fear that it might be misinterpreted rather as being about me. And when I see people with their phones angled, that angle, it's sort of like up and to the right or to the left, and their head is sort of coyly poised and I don't know, leaning to one side, and they're speaking as if they're just experts on everything, and I don't know, it just fucking annoys me. Sorry. I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings. If anybody is listening to me and you've done that, sorry, with a question mark. But frankly, it gets for lack of a better term, it gets on my tits. Okay. And I don't want to be misinterpreted as being somebody who's doing it for myself. This isn't about me. I feel like I channel certain things, and luckily I have the ability, privilege, and intelligence to know how to funnel it out into the world and which medium to choose. But when I do see somebody walking down the street speaking into their phone as if they're speaking to their adoring fans, listen, maybe I'm being too judgmental, but that does lead me to believe that it is about them. It is about them. It's not about what they have to offer. It's about them. They are the star of their own reality show. They are the star of their Instagram. That term public figure, when you go onto social media and you see that somebody has labeled themselves as a public figure, what the actual fuck is that? What is that? From the second I saw that term, I thought, you know what? I'm sorry, but you can't call yourself a public figure. Other people do that. For people to walk around going, oh, I'm sorry, what do you do? I'm a public figure. Really? Really? I'm sorry, I fucking can't. I've got no patience for it. And so, cut to, that's one of the reasons why I haven't gotten behind the microphone over in a few months, because I don't want to be part of just a whole generation of people who are just fucking chatting into nothing. I want it to count. I want it to mean something. My life is about trying to make this journey of suffering and life and beauty, all of it. I want to make it a little bit, make a little bit more sense, give it a little bit more context. And I want to be here to accompany other people through that. But it isn't about me. It's about everyone else. And I mean that. I really do mean that. I think earlier in my career, there may have been an element of wow, I'm getting a lot of attention. But I quickly understood that had nothing to do with me. It just had to do with everyone else. And I'm not going to get into that, but ultimately, I think that listen, it was about certain words and the facility with which those words came out of my mouth and the attitude that they came out with that got people's attention. But I don't think that, I hope it wasn't about me, because frankly, how boring. I mean, I think how boring it is for me to get attention, because if you look at the Bramness, every time I do a photo shoot for promotional purposes, I'm so bored. How many times can you spin this? I'm a bald dude in my mid to late 40s. How many ways can you spin this? What am I going to do? Put on a fucking pair of oh shit, what are they called? Victoria's Secret angel wings. I mean, what am I going to do in a photo shoot? Pose under a tree, look over my shoulder, maybe angle the camera up and over at an angle and look at it coyly. I don't know. I'm so fucking bored. I'm so bored with myself. So listen, that's why I haven't been around. Other stuff has been going on. And frankly, I just didn't want to be that person. And I don't think I have been that person. But I didn't want to get behind the microphone for the sake of getting behind the microphone if I didn't have something that I thought was legit to offer. And listen, as I said, and I think it was the first episode of this podcast, I would be recording at whatever frequency inspiration hit me, struck me. And sometimes that's 3 times a week. Sometimes that's once every 3 months. So, I mean, I know that seen through a professional podcaster lens, that's probably unprofessional and irresponsible and not good for branding. And frankly, I couldn't be fucking bothered. Sorry, I can't. I don't care. I don't care what best practice is. And I think I've said it before, but I've thought it many times. I love this podcast. I love doing it. I'm not interested in putting all the bells and whistles on it. I'm not interested in having some massive corporate sponsor. I'm not interested in having, some super fancy intro and outro. I've done the intro and outro. I've done it myself. It's music I created. I mean, sometimes I hear other podcasts and I think, shit, that's the real deal. And then I think maybe I should do that. And very quickly I realized, no, I shouldn't. This has to be a really authentic expression for me. And what you hear, I suppose, is what you get. And it's who I am, and it's what I mean to do in the world. So bells and whistles, be gone. I can't be bothered. With that said, I hope this finds you all well. It has been a very interesting few months. And what I found for myself is that I've sort of found a new normal. I found a rhythm. Finding life in Pandemica. That would be the chapter, or the title of the chapter of the past couple of months for me. I am comfortable. I'm good. And because I can recognize that in the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of fear. In my experience of it, there was a lot of fear, and I navigated it well, I have to say. But comparatively speaking to now, I can recognize how much fear there was. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to once again be proven to be an adaptive creature in a human body. And I'm happy to sort of ride out whatever's coming, to be honest. And the reason why I'm sitting behind the microphone this evening is because I'm not oblivious to the fact that there seems to be a lot of stuff going on around the world simultaneously, especially tonight. It is November 3rd, 2020. It is the day of the American elections. And, simultaneous to that happening, after the most volatile 4 years I remember in American history, there's this pandemic that seems to be ravaging the world. That seems to be somewhat under control where I am presently. Time will tell what happens, but we seem to be managing quite well. But this election is going on, the pandemic is going on. There seems to be a serious struggle for, and a very vocal and a very outspoken and a very now struggle for freedom and equality. And it's not just in the States, but of course the Black Lives Matter movement, last year, the year before, the Me Too movement. There's a very concentrated something happening right now. Over the past couple of weeks, we've also been seeing a rise in terror attacks. And part of me, I don't mean to be pessimistic or skeptical, but there was a part of me throughout the pandemic that was waiting for the ball to drop on terror attacks because everyone was suspiciously silent. But I guess it all kicked off in France. And now we're seeing it. We're seeing it sort of everywhere once again. So there just seems to be a lot of concentrated angst and turmoil and fury and division and fragmentation and name calling and sort of pedantic behavior. There's just a lot of stuff that makes a lot of us uncomfortable. And I suppose that it has been, to a certain extent, our defense mechanism to get as involved or not involved as we wanted to with any of those issues that were going on around the world. And by the way, the ability to get involved or to sort of not be involved with it speaks to privilege. That speaks to our privilege, depending on where we live and what our sort of demographic information is. But that is a luxury. And it's a luxury that I've been very aware of, that I can tune in or tune out to any of these things because, truth be told, aside from the pandemic, to a certain extent, none of them affect me right now today on a comfort level, safety level. And I'm very grateful for that. I'm also very aware of that. And I'm also very aware that that could change at the drop of a hat. But with that said, there have been moments where I've just sort of nodded my head in bewilderment about what was going on, let's say, in the States. Nodded my head in bewilderment at the fact that the so-called American president could stay in the office of president for this long. I don't understand. Nobody seems to be talking about the fact that the American political system is so archaic and seems to be so designed to keep the president in power that no one could have stopped this dude until potentially tonight or the next couple of days once all votes are counted. I find it fascinating. And maybe that's because I live somewhere. I live in Montreal. I live in Quebec. We wouldn't put up with that shit, or at least I'd like to believe that we wouldn't. We typically, as Montrealers and Quebecers, we protest. We take to the streets. And I understand that there have been protests in the States, and I don't mean to, and all over the world for that matter. I don't mean to say that somehow we would do it better. But I don't think that we would be silenced. We haven't been in the past. I've participated in demonstrations until we saw justice served. And I don't know, it just seems like there's something going on in the States. Listen, you know what it is? It's probably centuries and centuries and centuries of inequality and oppression. And it's finally coming to the surface. And I think that's fantastic. And I think that, to be honest, the so-called president, one of the greatest things about his presidency and him finagling his way into the office of the presidency or the office of the president is that all of a sudden, because of him, and because of everything that he stands for and everything he doesn't, all of those fragments and all of those little fissures in the American identity have risen to the surface. And many of us have known about those fissures and have known about the hypocrisy of a country calling itself the home of the free and the land of the brave, or land of the free, home of the brave, for so long. Yet, where in that bold statement or self-identification do we factor in the history of oppression? Where do we factor in the history of unequal rights, women's rights, LGBTQ plus rights, black rights, all, it's just, it amazes me. It amazes me that a country that has been born out of racism and sexism and misogyny and homophobia and oppression and abuse could not only self-identify as being the land of the free and the home of the brave, but that everyone else around the world would buy it. I've just always found it amazing. So one of the greatest things about the last 4 years is that all of a sudden what I have always known to be the truth is now common knowledge, and it's part of the discussion. It's not the elephant in the room or the dirty little secret that nobody wants to talk about. So I think that's brilliant. However, things are fucked up right now. It's not a good time in the world per se. And it's certainly not a good time in the world to be different. And I don't want to focus only on the States. There's shit going on in Poland. There's shit going on in Brazil. There's shit going on in Nigeria. There's shit going on everywhere. And what I like about the pandemic is that that's really fucking everywhere. And that's all of us. Everywhere around the world, that's all of us. Because it's, as I said, there are certain things that we can tune in to and tune out of, but the pandemic we can't. And that's everyone. And I like that. And in a previous episode of the podcast, I did call it one of the great equalizers. And I still kind of stand by that, but I do recognize that the way it affects us is different based on demographics, based on privilege, based on abundance or lack thereof. So I do feel the need to qualify that a little bit. Listen, all of this to say, I'm sure I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, and I'm sure I'm not talking about anything that you haven't already either thought of, mulled over, ruminated over, or even discussed with your people, or perfect strangers for that matter. But what I do want to say right now as I sit behind the microphone, in the closet, by the way, right next to the hangers. If I joggle them, you might hear them. You hear that? Those are hangers. There's some high fucking production value on this shit. I'm also swearing a lot tonight. I'm aware of it, but fuck it. I'm quite happy with that. What I want to say this evening is that this moment matters. This time matters. What's happening right now, all of this concentrated turmoil and chaos and change and conflict and opinion, it matters. And I want you to recognize that it matters. I want you to recognize that this is a moment that you need to remember. You need to be present, to tune into, in order for it to imprint so that you can look back on it. Because I'm telling you something, we are observing history happening. It's not a coincidence that all of these things, socially, economically, politically, are happening at the same time. It is all happening at the same time spiritually because we are going through a growing pain. Humanity is going through a growing pain. And maybe it has something to do with the relationship we've had with our planet over the past, let's say, 9, 10 decades. But the fact of the matter is something is going down, and it's going down now. And it's very easy to not take a step back from it and wake up every morning and just sort of be sucked into the low-level anxiety and the tension and the desire to simply have peace and to simply have the desire for people to get along and to see what used to be the land of the free and the home of the brave once again, or, well, maybe rise to a level of respectable at the very least. It would be nice to not worry about the people who I know, my friends and family who live in America. I have a friend who goes way back. I mean, this is someone who I was friends with as a kid. I spoke to her, or I texted her this morning because it's her birthday, and I jokingly, very sarcastically, facetiously texted, for your birthday, I wish you civil war. I wish you chaos and turmoil. And then got into like the real stuff. But, she got back to me and said, I asked her what she was doing for her birthday, and she said that she and her husband were planning on going out to pick up sushi, take out sushi tonight. Except they were too afraid to go outside. And, I've been seeing reports of businesses that are boarded up today, over the past couple of days, and for the next couple of days, all over the United States, or rather the divided states of America. because they're expecting something. They're expecting something. I mean, when you have somebody mongering hate for 4 years and division, it is impossible for it to come to a head like it probably is coming to a head this evening over the next couple of days. It's impossible for it to come to a head without it resulting in some sort of chaos and erratic behavior and violence. And I mean, my God, part of me just wants to say, how did we get here? And the other part of me knows exactly how we got here. And I know that it will probably get a little bit worse or maybe a lot worse before it gets better, but it will get better. And what we have to remember is the significance of everything happening simultaneously and the significance of being able to see the end in the beginning being now. Being able to recognize that in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time, if this Bramness, if this body is still around, I'm going to be able to talk about what this was like. I'm going to be able to look back on this moment of history because this moment in history is going to be referred to. This one is going down into the textbooks if those still exist, even if they're virtual. I remember I grew up, my family, my parents talking about, they remembered where they were precisely to the minute when they found out JFK had been assassinated, RFK had been assassinated, Marilyn Monroe had died. For me, it was Diana. I think I talked about it in a previous episode of the podcast. But I will always remember this. I will always remember what this moment in time was like on every level. And I think it's important that we remember to remind ourselves that this moment matters. We need to remember this. Because in reminding it's somewhat of a mindfulness practice. In reminding ourselves that we need to remember this, we are reminding ourselves that there is value here. This isn't just chaos. This isn't random. This isn't meant to make us so uncomfortable that we want to crawl out of our skins. This isn't meant to compound what we're already dealing with terrorism and with a pandemic. Or with whatever other issues you may be dealing with on the daily. This is about understanding that there is some serious spiritual work that we are all being called to do now. And we don't have a choice. You have got to show up to class. Life has this higher education. Life is just the classroom, right? And we have got this higher education that, like it or not, we have signed up for through the simple act of being born into a human body. So regardless of whether or not we accept the mission, it's fucking our mission. Every single one of us on an individual and collective level. And so I think it's important that we remember that this matters. This moment matters. We need to remember this. We need to remember what it feels like. We need to remember whose voices we're hearing the loudest. We need to remember who, for lack of a better term, who the light bearers are, the ones who are not just contributing to, the tsunami of talk and chatter. And part of me wants to demonize the media a little bit, but I'm not going to go into that because I do believe that to a certain extent, media doesn't help. I understand that media's responsibility is to report on what is current. I would like to see media report on shit that's actually good instead of just fear-mongering. Because one thing that drove me up the fucking wall at the beginning of the pandemic was tons of media outlets producing copy that basically were not based in anything real. They were producing articles saying, what might airline travel look like in the age of COVID-19, in the age of coronavirus, before the term COVID-19 even, was brought to the vernacular. I remember seeing those articles just thinking, why don't you just fucking write something that is of use? Because what something might look like when we don't have enough information is not helpful. People were already dealing with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unknowns in these unprecedented times. And I can't believe that I used those terms in the beginning as well, but I did, because I really believe they were. But then it became a catchphrase word thing, and it just drove me up the fucking wall. In these moments of uncertainty, please. I think that to a certain extent, media has contributed to people's fear as opposed to assuaging that fear. And, we need to remember whose voices were assuaging that fear, whose voices were reminding us to be hopeful and to just ride it out, reminding us that we've ridden other shit out. We can ride this out. We need to remember this. You need to remember this. You need to understand the significance and the value of you being alive to witness this. We are bearing witness to change. We are bearing witness to history. We're bearing witness to a moment in time that is, I believe, going to change everything. Most of you know that I have been saying for a decade that we had been living in a dark age, and that the only thing that was going to wake us up out of that slumber was something that was going to scare every single one of us around the world. And in all honesty, I believe that I was referring to a world war that had not yet started. Little did I know that a pandemic was going to sweep the earth and do exactly what I had predicted, which is scare every single person on earth. Because when we are scared, we pay attention. And when we are scared, all of a sudden we are more apt to change. When things are good, we don't typically do the work. It's when things are not quote unquote good that we show up to do the work, because we want to feel better, because our levels of comfort have been destabilized. They've been set off. And so we will do anything. At that point, we'll do anything to feel better. We'll do anything to restore a sense of equilibrium and a sense of, okay, I can breathe, I can relax. And listen, a lot of you and a lot of people have reached out to me for coaching, which has been fantastic, because I think that we've been doing really, really, really necessary, important work. And by the way, a lot of the people who have reached out, it hasn't been about the virus. It's been about, now you've got time. Now you're home. Now you're not in transit going to and from work for 4 hours total daily. All of a sudden, there is time to do these things. And what we know about the shit that we haven't dealt with is that what we resist persists. So if we think that something's dealt with, but we know on some level we haven't really done it properly, we're going to, just sort of relegate it to a certain part of our mind and leave it there under the assumption that it's there for good and it's fine and whatever. What we know about this is that when we slow down, or when we are given the opportunity to have more time to think to ourselves, that stuff pops right back up. And it's like, hey, remember me? Okay, now let's do this. So I think that this is just such an important moment. It's such an important moment in time. And I think what's even more important about it being such an important moment is us recognizing, being present, tuning in to the significance of now. And I don't mean that in a Ram Dass kind of way. I mean that into like what's happening today, Election Day 2020. I think that no, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not going to say that, because I don't want to be one of those voices that's like, yeah, but what might it look like? All I'll say is that we're going to be able to ride all of it out. I know this. The evidence has shown us that we will. And so we have to. But the mindset that we have as we do that, that's up to every single one of us. It's up to every single one of you. How are you going to ride this out? Are you going to ride it out cowering in your bed with the blanket over your head? Or are you going to ride it out going out into the world as much as we are allowed to, given certain restrictions based on where we live with this virus, and sort of pay attention? Be awake in the world. Be awake in life. Be a witness, bear witness to history making itself day by day. I find it's almost like a miracle is happening. And I almost find it like a blessing that I'm here to bear witness to it. And I do have to admit that there were moments in the first wave of the pandemic where I would wake up in the morning and think, I just want to go back to sleep. I don't think that I was depressed, but I think that the potential was there. And I made myself get up, and I made myself work out and practice yoga and meditate and help other people. And I think that's really what got me through it. I don't want to make it seem like, I've been like, oh, this is the greatest thing to ever happen to humanity. It has not been like that from the beginning of the pandemic, obviously by far. But it does feel like that right now. And I'm really grateful for that, because that feels good enough for me to be able to think that it's worth sharing with you. It's inspiring enough to me to sit down behind the microphone after a few months or a couple of months and speak to you, hoping that these words land in your brain and mean something to you. This is not just a moment where we need to cower. In fact, this is not a moment where we need to cower at all. This is a moment where we need to stand up and speak out and raise our hands in solidarity with our human brothers and sisters and our animal siblings as well, but specifically with the people in the world right now whose rights are being taken away, whose freedoms are being taken away, who are not safe. How is it that my friend does not feel safe enough to go out and get something to eat tonight? That in itself means that something really massive is going on. And I could sit here and lament the fact that it sucks, or I could recognize the spiritual significance of change, and I could share it with you. So, let me leave you with this. Remember this. Remember this time. Give it all a good think. I'll see you later. This has been the Examine Life with Bram Levinson.